Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concepts, and Overviews. I am your host, Tech Coach Ralph, where we are engineered to win. In today's episode, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into cybersecurity, and we are going to focus on IAM, Identity and Access Management Engineering, because we always hear the term. If you wouldn't believe how many people I see say, "I want to get into cybersecurity. I want to get into cybersecurity. I want to get into cybersecurity," but they have no idea what cybersecurity is and what it entails. So we are going to dive a little bit deeper into what are some of the roles in cybersecurity. And this week, we are going to start off with Identity and Access Management, which is IAM Engineer. What do they do? What is their life like? All of that good stuff, their responsibilities, their duties, their key tasks, all of that good stuff, right? And that's the plan. But if you are interested in learning more, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can know whenever we go live and whenever we drop new content, because this content is here for you to be informative, to educate you, to add value into your life. So that is the key, that is the plan, and that's what we're going to do here, right? So without further ado, let's get into our presentation. All right, so let's get into our topic today, which is Identity and Access Management Engineering. And so on our agenda today, we are going to be talking about what is IAM, the role of a IAM, an Identity and Access Management Engineer, the skills and the qualifications for it, the technologies that IAM engineers use, the best practices for Identity and Access Management Engineering, the challenges and the trends that we face in this industry. And I'm saying we, but I'm not even in cybersecurity or a Identity and Access Management Engineer, but we're all in technology, right? And the case studies and some examples, and then we'll end our presentation. So what is IAM, short for Identity and Access Management? So IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. It is a framework of policies, processes, and technologies that ensure that the right individual or systems have the appropriate access to resources in a computing environment. The primary goal of IAM is to help organizations manage and secure digital identities such as users, devices, applications, and control their access to data and systems. So, what are the key components to IAM, Identity and Access Management? It's authentication, which is different from authorization, account management, role-based access control, very big thing, and audit and compliance. And we'll touch on those key components as we get into it. So let's go over briefly what these things are, right? So authentication, that's when you're verifying the identity of a user, through like their username and password. So authentication, verifying the identity of a user, system, or device. This can involve methods such as passwords, multi-factor authentication, MFA, biometrics, etc. Right? So authentication is the being able to log into a system with like your username and password. If you're using MFA, OAuth, whatever the case is, right? It is authenticating that you are who you say you are through whatever various means of authentication. Now, authorization, though, determining what actions or resources a user, system, or application is allowed to access. This is usually based on the authenticated identity and associated permissions. So authorization is different than authentication because authorization says, what are you allowed to do? While authentication is verifying that you're allowed to be in the system in the first place, right? But then once you're in the system, Now it looks at what you're allowed to do, what you're authorized to do, right? So there's a big difference. They're close to each other, but there's a huge difference between the two, right? Account management, handling the creation, modification, and deletion of user accounts. This includes provisioning, granting access, deprovisioning, revoking access, and managing permissions throughout the user's lifecycle, right? So when you get hired for a company, they're going to create an email address for you, an account, and everything like that. And so all of that. And then when somebody gets let go, definitely not you, right? But when somebody gets let go, fired, etc., or they leave the company, right? Maybe you're leaving to go and get a better job, better experience, better opportunity. So now they have to deprovision. So they have to remove your access to their system. So that is that's the part of account management. And then role-based access control, assigning permissions to users based on their roles within an organization. This helps simplify the management of access rights. So it's like being in a group, right? We're saying, okay, this group of, let's say, QA engineers, they have access to this part, right? This is so you'll be added to the group of QA engineers, and then that means you can go and access this part of it, but you might not be able to access the things that the software engineers can do, and then you might not be able to access the things that the front-end developers could do, right? And the same way the software engineers might not be able to access the things that the QA engineers have access to. They might not have access to the things that the front-end developers have access to, things like that, right? And then there's an administrator who can access to everything. They have the master key. So that's role-based access control. And then audit and compliance, logging and monitoring activities to ensure that access is used appropriately and in compliance with security policies and regulations, which means that what that means is they're keeping track of what you're doing in the system, right? And if you are trying to get into something that you're not allowed to, you're going to get a knock on your door, right? Or you're going to get that Slack message or that Microsoft Teams message saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? Do we need to have a conversation, right? So they are making sure that everything is on the up and up. That is what audit and compliance is, making sure you are following what's given to you. You're not trying to hack into the system, trying to put out private information, so everything is being monitored. You are being watched as well as you should be, because if you're not doing anything wrong, you have absolutely nothing to worry about, all right? So identity and access management is a crucial aspect of cybersecurity and is implemented in various environments, including on-premises systems, cloud computing platforms. Like I've seen it in AWS, I've seen it in Google Cloud platform, I've seen it in Azure, and in hybrid infrastructures. It helps organizations mitigate security risks, ensure compliance, and streamline the management of access to resources, right? Super, super important. Who are IAM engineers, right? Who are these people? What the heck who are they, right? So an identity and access management engineer is a professional who specializes in designing and implementing and managing identity and access control systems within an organization's IT infrastructure, their information technology infrastructure. Identity and access management is a crucial component of cybersecurity, ensuring that the right individuals have appropriate access to resources and systems while most importantly, preventing unauthorized access, right? So the people who are allowed in, they need to have the permission to get to the right spots, but we have to keep the bad people out, right? And that is a everyday struggle because the bad guys are always trying to get in and the good guys are always trying to keep them out, right? So that is the goal, amongst many other things that identity and access management engineers do. That is one of the biggest things to keep unwanted visitors out, right? So what are the responsibilities of an identity and access management engineer, right? So there's user identity management, there's access control, there's authentication and authorization, which we just spoke about. There's role-based access control, which we just spoke about. There's integration, there's security audits and compliance, which we just spoke about. There's incident response and policy development. So let's touch on the ones a little bit that we didn't just speak about, all right? So user identity and management, that's creating and managing the user accounts, including provisioning and deprovisioning the user account. So we did actually speak about that briefly, but it's, being able to create accounts and delete accounts, right? And then we have access control, implementing and enforcing access policies to ensure that users have the necessary permissions to perform their roles and responsibilities. We don't want to give too much access. We don't want to give too little access, right? But I would say it's better to start with a little, and as they need more, you give them more. But if you give them everything, how does the saying go? You give an inch, they take a mile. So you got to limit the access to make sure that everything is on the up and up, because you don't want to just give everyone a key to your house, right? And let's say you do give a key to your house, you don't want to give them access to every single room, So you have to make sure. Think about it the same way, like think about securing a system the same way you would secure your home, your business, whatever, your car, whatever it is, right? Same concept. Not everybody has a key to your car. Not everybody has a key to your house. And even though even though the people who do have a key to your house, they don't have access to every single thing in your house, right? So for example, there's some people who have a key to my house, but they do not have the code to the safe, right? So think about it that way. And then we spoke about role-based access control. We spoke about authorization and authentication. We spoke about security audits and compliance, but let's touch on integration, right? Integrating identity and access management systems with other IT infrastructure components, such as directories, databases, and applications. So I'll give you an example with AWS, right? There's a section called the identity and access management section, and you can set up like permissions on what a particular user can access and what they can access, right? So you control that, and that is like the integration, because so you can say they can access, like this user can access this database and they can write to the database, but they can't delete. They can read this user can read the database, but they can't write to it. They can't delete, stuff like that, right? So then we have incident response, which is responding to security incidents related to unauthorized access or compromised credentials. So once you get that alert that something's going on in the system, is going haywire, there is intruder alert, then you need to you need to know how to handle that incident, and you need to have a game plan set in place so you can just activate the playbook and get to work and get that intruder out and banish them. All right. So then we have policy development, developing and updating identity and access management policies and procedures to adapt to evolving security threats and organizational requirements, right? So that's what they're doing. So always working, always thinking of like, okay, how do we better protect the system? How do we continue to properly give the right amount of access, just the right amount of access that we can allow people to do their jobs, and how do we prevent the bad guys from coming in and causing us harm? Because you have competitors, and those competitors want to get rid of you, So how do we do that? How do we prevent that? All right. So IAM engineers often work closely with other IT professionals, security teams, and application developers to implement and maintain a comprehensive identity and access management strategy. They play a crucial role in safeguarding an organization's sensitive information and ensuring that only authorized individuals can access the necessary resources. So thank God for that. So what are some of the key tasks of these identity and access management engineers? So we'll go through the list and then we'll touch on a little bit of them, right? So user provisioning and deprovisioning, we spoke on that. Access control, we spoke on that. Authentication mechanisms, we'll revisit that. Authorization policies, very important. Directory services and integration, identity federation. Security audits and monitoring, we spoke on that. Policy development, spoke on that. Incident response, we spoke on that. Education and training, super important. Shout out to education and training. What we do here all the time on the Tech Coach Ralph channel, we do education and training. Application and system integration and compliance management. So let's touch on those a little bit. So authentication mechanisms, implementing and managing secure authentication methods, so whether it's like just a username and password, two-factor authentication, OAuth, like logging in through one system and then it gives you access to the rest of the system, integrate multi-factor authentication to enhance security, just mentioned, monitor and address authentication-related issues. So let's say you set up a policy of like, if you log in with the wrong password 5 times, lock you out of your computer. That's where this type of stuff comes from. It's from the authentication mechanisms. Authorization policies, designing and implementing authorization policies It utilizes role-based access control, we spoke about, to assign permissions based on the job roles. That's what I was mentioning earlier, right? You have a group for QA, and then you can have different levels of QA, right? You can say people who are assigned to the group of QA director, they can access these parts of the system. People who are assigned to manager can access this. People who are senior QA, they can access that. And then if you are just a regular QA engineer, QA tester, whatever the case may be, then your access is limited to this part, right? So that is what they do there. All right, so directory services integration, integrating identity and access management systems with directory services such as Active Directory, LDAP, all of that, right? So they integrate you with these type of systems, and or they can also integrate with single sign-on, SSO, solutions to enhance user experience. And the SSO, right? You log into one source and then it gives you access to everything else. And it really helps a lot to reduce the because you don't want to be logging into this one CRM and then you have to log into this email, then you have to log into because companies, they have a fleet of softwares that they use so that their users can properly do what they have to do, like whether you're doing your expense reports, whether you're doing your travel plans, whether you're logging into your CI/CD pipeline, whatever the case may be, right? So many different systems that a company use. So it's like, all right, let's set up this SSO, the single sign-on, and once they authenticate through one place, they can go through all the places that the company has, and then you also set up, like we mentioned, the authorization policy saying, all right, if this user is trying to get into the CI/CD stuff, they have this much access. If they're trying to get to their expense reporting, they have this much access. And if they're trying to get into their travel, then they have this much access, right? So that is what that identity federation is. We spoke on security audits and monitoring. So let's continue the policy development. We spoke about policy development and incident response. So education and training, provide training to end users on secure access practices. So you know how and educate the IT staff and other stakeholders on the identity and access management policies and procedures. So you know how every year you have to take that training course of security compliance, and then sometimes it gets kind of boring. But I will tell you, after learning a lot more about these cybersecurity principles, it is getting a lot more interesting for me. So I'm going to actually enjoy taking the security course at work this year, right? But it's about educating, because without the proper education, my people fail for a lack of knowledge. So let's get that education. And that's what the identity and access management engineers do. They also provide us the proper training material so we can stay educated. We don't get hacked, whether it's through social engineering or having a weak password, whatever the case may be, right? Then we have integration with applications and systems. And so we spoke on that. So we're not going to have to get back into that. Compliance management, ensure IAM systems comply with relevant regulatory requirements, support audits, and provide documentation for compliance purposes. So whatever the regulatory requirements are, because depending on the field that you're in, right, the industry that you're in, there can be some regulations that say, all right, the developer cannot have the ability to deploy, right? So we need another team to deploy, because that's how the regulations go. So now you might say, okay, QA has access to deploying, but developers do not, and things like that, right? So that's how that compliance works. You look at the industry that you're in, you look at the regulatory requirements, and then you build your compliance procedures around that. So identity and access management engineers play a crucial role in maintaining the security and the integrity of an organization's digital assets by effectively managing identities and controlling access to resources. The tasks mentioned above contribute to creating a robust and secure IAM framework within an organization. So that is amazing. All right, let's keep going. So what are some of the required skills for an identity and access management engineer? So, of course, having identity and access management knowledge, okay? Security knowledge, having knowledge of directory services, having a good understanding of authentication and authorization, They are not the same things. They work together, but they are not the same thing. Then we need to have identity and federation knowledge, right? We just touched on that. Security compliance, scripting and programming, network and system security, communication skills, and problem solving, all right? And what about the qualifications for an identity and access management engineer? So the qualifications would be your education. In most cases, you are going to need a bachelor's degree in computer science, information technology, or a related field, right? That's often what's required. And sometimes they even may require a master's degree, all right? And then with the education, you're probably going to acquire some certifications. So relevant certifications can be beneficial, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, such as Certified Information System Security Professional, the CISSP, Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, Certified Information Systems Auditor, CISA, or vendor-specific IAM certification. On the past live stream, we just saw that we have some different companies, right? ForgeRock, for example, is one that I remember. They offer courses and certifications as well. So, and then you need experience. You need practical experience in implementing and managing IAM solutions, and previous work in IT security or related roles is often preferred. Not 100% required, but it is definitely preferred, all right? And you need to have industry knowledge. Familiarity with the specific industry in which the organization operates can be an asset. So, for example, if it's a healthcare organization, if you have prior experience in the healthcare industry, it is going to be gold. If it is a banking industry or finance industry, right? Having prior experience in the banking or the finance industry is going to be amazing for you, right? And then last but not least, continuous learning. IAM technology evolves. It evolves like everything in technology does. So a commitment to continuous learning and staying updated on industry trends is crucial. It is very crucial. And that's why we do what we do on the Tech Coach Ralph channel. We're continuously learning, continuously pushing forward because our goal is to win. Our goal is to be the best. All right. So remember, the specific requirements may vary from employer to employer, and some organizations might prioritize certain skills or qualifications over others based on their specific needs. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing is guaranteed. It is advisable to check the job listings. Like I always say, check the list, check the job and the description, and go from there. So it's advisable to check the job listing and description for the specific requirements of the position that you are interested in. All right. So that is the goal of that. So what are some of the technologies that are used for IAM engineering? All right. So we have authentication. You can do that through multi-factor or biometrics, fingerprint authorization, things like that. There can be authentication. There can be authorization, which is role-based. There's attribute-based. There's directory services like LDAP, Active Directory. There's single sign-on. There's identity, governance, and administration. There's cloud-based IAM services, right? So let's talk about it a little bit more. So multi-factor authentication, MFA for short, it is when it requires the user to provide multiple forms of identification before granting access. So an example of that is when you go to log into something, you enter your username and password, and they say, hey, we just sent you a text message or an email with this 6-digit letter code, and go ahead and get that from there and then put it in. Or it can be using like Google Authenticator, where, like, for instance, you can set up Google Authenticator when you're logging into your AWS account and you put in your username and password, and it says, hey, you open up this app, the Authenticator app, and you need to enter this 6-digit code that expires within like a minute. So go ahead and do that. And then it resets every minute. So that is the multi-factor authentication example. Then we also have biometrics, where it uses unique physical or behavioral traits for identification, such as fingerprints, iris scans, or voice recognition, which, if anyone has ever watched NCIS, I remember when Gibbs would go into that special secret room, and then he would do that eye scan thing, and then they would grant him access. So that is biometric authentication, right? Then we have authorization, which we spoke about many times. We already spoke about the role-based access control. So let's talk about the attribute-based access control, right? So it uses user and environmental attributes to determine the access control, right? So that's that. And then we have our directory services such as LDAP, which stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It's a protocol for accessing and maintaining distributed directory information services over an IP network. We also have Active Directory, Microsoft's directory service for Windows domain networks, right? Then we have single sign-on. Single sign-on is centralized authentication services. It allows users to log in once and access multiple systems without being prompted to log in again. Identity Governance and Administration, IGA, automated provisioning and deprovisioning, right? So it manages user accounts and access privileges based on predefined rules and policies, right? So it's a way to automate doing this stuff because we don't like to do things manually anymore, right? And the reason that I don't like to do things manually is because I have more confidence in writing a script once and then running it many, many times and then making the necessary updates as they come, right? Then we have Identity as a Service, IDaaS, and there's the cloud-based identity access management services. So provides IAM functionality as a service, often integrated with other cloud services. So like that's what you get from Google Cloud Platform. That's what you get from Google Cloud Platform. You get that from AWS. You get that from Azure. You get that from ForgeRock. You get that from Okta. So many different companies who are doing it now, and you can get certifications from pretty much any of them, right? Then there's privileged access management, where is password vaulting. It stores and manages privileged account credentials. We have session monitoring and recording. It tracks and records activities of privileged users for auditing purposes. Security information and event management, SIEM. Log management collects, normalize, and analyze log data for security monitoring and compliance. So, and there's like, I'm going to guess that Splunk falls into that. Sumo Logic falls into that. So many different log management softwares that like it reads the logs from all the servers and then it puts it into a centralized location, and then you can like filter, find out what's going on through there, things like that, right? And then there is API security, OAuth and OpenID Connect, protocols for delegated authorization and authentication. And then we get into the blockchain, decentralized identity DID. And that is leverages blockchain for secure self-sovereign identity management. And then we finish up with adaptive authentication, which is risk-based authentication, analyzes user behavior and contextual information to dynamically adjust authentication requirements. That sounds pretty cool, to be honest with you, right? And then lastly, mobile device management, mobile application management. It manages the access to mobile applications, ensuring security and compliance. So we just went through a bunch of different IAM technologies. We could probably do a video on each one of them, but we are just going to leave it as that. For now, these technologies can be combined and customized based on their specific needs and security requirements of an organization. As the field of identity and access management continues to evolve, new technologies and approaches may emerge. And it's not may, they will certainly emerge, all right? All right, so what are some of the best practices for IAM engineers? So number one, which is probably the most important, you got to understand the business needs, right? Nothing you can do about it. You have to understand the business needs, because if you do not, then you're not going to provide a good service, a good job, right? The next thing, the principle of least privilege. I think I already touched on that, but you would rather give less access and then grant it as needed than give more access and then it gets abused, all right? Give them a little and give them more as it is needed, as it is determined. Then implement the role-based access control. All good. Regularly review and update access. Make sure that the people who have access should continue to have access on a regular basis, because things change and roles change and responsibilities change and make the necessary adjustments as needed. Use multi-factor authentication. That can't be stated more. It is so important to use multi-factor authentication because if it's only one way to log in and the password gets leaked, you are in trouble. And here's the thing, right? Because of multi-factor authentication, even if the password gets leaked and they say, okay, we need you to log in with this email or this phone number or a text message code, that prevents them. It makes it a little bit harder. I mean, if they have everything, if they have your phone, if they have your email and everything, then you might be in a little bit of trouble, right? But for example, with Google, when you go and you log in, it'll send a message to a phone that says, "Oh, choose the number that's displayed on the phone on the screen," or something like that. And it just makes it harder for people to get in where they're not supposed to be, right? So use strong password policies. That goes without saying, right? Have strong passwords. Don't use password 123, things like that, right? So centralized IAM management it provides a unified view of user identities and access across the organization. It helps streamline the process and ensure consistency. And then we have monitoring and audit access. Of course, we have to do that to make sure that everybody's on the up and up, and definitely educate the users to make sure that they are following the best practices that you set, and that make sure that everyone is well educated, everyone is well informed, that we have the right people in the right places to do the right things, right? And then automating the IAM processes. Use automation to streamline the IAM process, right? Such as onboarding and offboarding users. Automation reduces the likelihood of human error and ensures consistent application of policies. What I preach to you all the time. Tools like Terraform and things like that can get that done in a very automated way. And then regularly update the IAM policies. Very, very important. And then honorable mention, collaborate with other teams, work closely with IT, security, and other relevant teams to ensure a holistic approach to security. And lastly, stay informed about the emerging technologies, right? Can't stress that enough, staying informed. So what are some challenges and trends that pop up in the identity and access management engineering role? So identity and access management is a dynamic field that continually evolves to address emerging challenges. Here are some of the challenges and trends for IAM engineers. So there is a complexity of environments. There is user experience versus security, right? It's hard to strike that balance, but that is why you get paid the big bucks. Integration challenges. So integrating IAM solutions with other systems and applications can be quite complex, especially when dealing with legacy systems. Legacy systems can be super, super challenging. And then we have regulatory compliances, navigating and staying compliant with various regulations and standards such as GDPR, HIPAA, and all those other acronyms. They pose a challenge, and a failure to comply can result in severe, very, very expensive consequences, right? And we have to be aware of the insider threats. We have to be hip to the emerging technologies and the identity life cycle management. So effectively managing the entire life cycle of user identities, including onboarding, changes to roles and positions, offboarding. That's very important, especially offboarding, because once somebody leaves the company, you got to get them out of the system. Ensuring timely and accurate updates poses a challenge as always. All right. And credential management, protecting user credentials and preventing unauthorized access through techniques like phishing and credential stuffing, which was what got 23andMe, which we just reviewed the other day, right? Credential stuffing was what hurt them. It requires ongoing attention. So what are some trends in the IAM engineering position? Zero trust security model. I'm just going to run through these. I'm not going to go into detail. Biometric authentication, continuous authentication, API security, adaptive access control, cloud IAM adoption, shifting to the cloud, super important. Identity governance and administration, and blockchain for identity management. So IAM engineers it's essential to stay informed about these trends and proactively address the challenges to ensure that the security and efficiency of identity and access management in their organizations. It's a must, all right? It is a must. So, what are some case studies and examples, right? So, there's in the healthcare industry, the financial industry, e-commerce, government agency, cloud, migration, education institutions, and technology companies, right? So, let's go through like a healthcare scenario and the solution, right? Oh, we'll just do one. So, a large healthcare organization needs to comply with strict, trust me, I've been in a healthcare agency and it is a healthcare company, and it is very strict to the regulatory requirements such as HIPAA to protect patient data. So, what is the identity and access management solution to that, right? Implementing a robust IAM system ensures that only authorized healthcare professionals can access patient records. The role-based access control is used to manage permissions, and audit trails help maintain compliance, right? So, for example, the nurses can access a certain type of information, the CNAs can access a certain type of information, the radiologists can access a certain type of information, the doctors, the healthcare administrators, all of them. Like, they can get some type of access, but they don't get everything. And that is to stay in compliance with HIPAA as long as all the other acronyms that there are, right? So let's do one more. Why don't we just do one more? Let's talk about e-commerce, right? So the scenario is an e-commerce platform faces challenges in managing user identities, especially during high traffic periods like sales events. So what is the solution to that? The IAM Engineer implements a scalable and efficient authentication process, ensuring a seamless experience for customers. Adaptive access control might be used to manage traffic spikes. All right. So that is that. All right. Let's move on. So we are at the end, and we covered what in the world is identity and access management, the role of an identity and access management engineer, the skills and the qualifications that they need, what are some of the technologies used around identity and access management, the best practices that the IAM engineer should use, some of the challenges and the trends that this engineer will face, and we looked at a couple of case studies and examples of how the IAM solution would be implemented. So, with that being said, do you have any questions? Leave them in the comments. If you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. If you think I missed something, if you think I got something wrong, I am learning with you, and I just wanted to present the information to you so you can tell me how wrong I am. If you like the presentation, if you disliked it, whatever the case may be, that is what we're here to do. So with that being said, we are back here, and I truly, truly appreciate you for spending the time to investigate and learn about the IAM engineering role, a role in cybersecurity. So if you're interested in cybersecurity, this is definitely a role to look into. It is so promising, and trust me, I do not think that many people are doing it. So time to hop on the bandwagon now, all right? So if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can know every time we go live. Like the video, share the video, check out the Patreon, see all the amazing information that's being dropped in there, where we do the work in there, all right? But until next time, thank you for tuning in to Software Explorations Concept and Overviews. I am your host, the one and only yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph. Until next time, this is Tech Coach Ralph signing off.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.